So, okay, I think the obvious question that when people were first discovering your kind of this new kind of comedy, they would say, how is this possible that this guy ever gets in with a Donald Trump, let's say, in the first place? And I think your tactics were very creative and interesting. You were just a member of the crew, right?
Well, yes, when former President Donald Trump, walked into that room, he assumed that the handsome blonde man in a suit would be interviewing him. It was a director, James Bobin, who later went on to direct other movies. But he was very dismayed when that director said, actually, no, this is the man who's going to be interviewing you. And I remember the look on Trump's face as he saw me and went, really? Him? Um, and so, yes, I mean, I was a member of the crew, and we were often appealing to people's ego. We said to Donald Trump, we're going to be interviewing the greatest business leaders in the world. Do you want to be a part of this? So he jumped at the chance.
Well, and it also creates just endless scenarios that are hilarious that people can obviously go and track down in one format or another. But a personal favorite was having Ali G talk to the late Gore Vidal and think he's Vidal Sassoon. I mean, I
Yes,
don't know
yeah.
where. Anyway, now a lot of the kind of gibberish words that, or a lot of the words that Borat says are not Kazakh language. Can you share where they come from?
So with the first Borat, the aim was that I would learn fluent Polish prior to the start of filming. I only gave myself a month, and I started studying a few hours a day. And after about 2 weeks, I realized this is never going to happen. So I decided to incorporate Hebrew, which I spoke fairly well. My mother's from Israel. And in the new movies, there's a mixture of some Polish that I learned, some Hebrew, and then there's also some Bulgarian that I'm using from Maria Akalova's sentences. So it's a kind of
Yes.
amalgam between the three. But during the Israeli premiere of Borat, it took about 10 minutes, and then somebody in the middle just shouted out, "Wait, he's speaking Hebrew!" And the audience erupted in hysteria. So there is an
That's
irony if
great.
the most anti-Semitic character ever on screen is actually speaking a Jewish language.
Absolutely. Now, you there are consequences. There are situations when you put yourself in, a situation where people who are not, let's say, very big fans of the LGBT community, like some of the folks you've encountered as Bruno. I mean, when they find out what Bruno is about, they are not always, these are real people, not unsuspecting, who then react in real ways. Now that I know can lead to hilarious moments. I think early on in your career, you saying there was sort of upper crust British people who would open up in ways that they otherwise wouldn't when they were talking to Ali, or to, I guess it was Borat. But this can also result in legal and safety issues for you, right? I mean, this with we'll get to what happened with Borat's subsequent movie film, but I mean, in the years leading up to it, you had a couple of close calls.
Yeah, I mean that scene, and I don't know if it's online. I think it may be on YouTube, but that scene where Bruno is pretending to be straight, he's reinvented himself as a character, Straight Dave, ends in a riot, and I end up making love to my co-star. I mean, when I say making love, we were very specific because we had. I had to be very careful. I was briefed by the lawyer that if I did certain things, that I would be guilty of the same crime that the Chicago Seven were tried for, which is crossing a state line to incite a riot. There were certain parameters that I could make love to my co-star with, but it ends with a riot. I mean, there were 2,000 people in that audience there. Some of them were on parole, actually. There were people with swastikas tattooed on their heads, and they stormed, were throwing metal chairs into the cage. A member of the audience climbed into the cage to beat me up. It was pretty scary. And, those are the dangerous moments, actually, when there are a crowd of people. I mean, we saw it at the Capitol. But there was another time in a religious district in Jerusalem where Bruno is wearing a kind of homoerotic version of a Hasidic outfit, and I'm chased down the street by an angry mob of Hasids. It was pretty scary, And another time in Bruno, actually, it was a 7-hour scene I spent with these two hunters. When they realized that they were alone in a field with Bruno, they went and they loaded their shotguns. And that was of concern because I realized that about an hour later, I was going to, while naked, try to get into their tents. So I knew where the scene was going. So, and there was there were other scenes where I can't go into the details, but I was so concerned, and Barry, it's not just me; it's the cameramen in there as well, and sometimes the director. So concerned that we were going to get shot that we looked to see how we could jump out the window without breaking our legs. So, we had a bodyguard, but it was clear that if somebody was going to shoot me, I would have to jump out the window first. But
in fact,
we felt at the time.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I mean, I think didn't you break your heel or something one time jumping out of a fire escape or something?
Yes, that's right. On Bruno, I broke my heel, which is a very rare injury in the last 3 decades. It was quite popular in the 70s when people were wearing platform shoes. But I broke my heel while jumping off a fire escape after escaping out of the 14th century story of a skyscraper in Kansas City while trying not to get arrested.
Crazy. Well, so I think another thing that people should understand about these scenarios, like you just mentioned a 7-hour shoot as one example, and I know that that'll come back around when we talk about Borat, multi-days in character. Nobody should mistake this as just, kind of winging it or improv. I mean, these are performances. You get made up, you get into costumes, you have a script, you have a place that you need, points you need to cover, and so what is for you when you are approaching a scene? Can you just take us into your preparation process for something that is going to be, this isn't, most scenes in a movie will be shot in a fraction of the time that you're doing some of these. So I just really love to know your preparation process.
Well, the preparation is the same whether I'm preparing for Abby Hoffman or Borat or Bruno. It's, mastering firstly the script. Wonderfully, that was provided by the brilliant Aaron Sorkin, and there's no better person to write a script than him. Then there's the accent, making sure I've got the right accent, making sure I've got the right pitch. What's the rhythm of that person? How does he speak? So there's the uniqueness. Each of the characters I've created have their own unique form of speech. What's their worldview? What's their backstory? With someone like Bruno or Borat, if you're in the company of people for 7 hours, Borat times for days, you have to know everything about your family, everything about your country, how you got there, everything you could be asked over 5 days. What's your wardrobe? How do you walk? How do you sit? How do you eat, drink? How do you even go to the bathroom? Because you know that somebody will be going to the bathroom after you. What's the bathroom going to look like? So you need to create a complete character. And I once said I had a discussion with Aaron about it, Aaron Sorkin. And I said, it's a little bit like if you said to the cast of the Chicago 7, today, you're going to play the scene, but I'm going to put you in a real courtroom. And no one can work out that you're playing a character. But I need you to get these lines out. You're going to be in the courtroom for the whole day and make sure you get the scene. So, I have the lines. We write a screenplay where, I'm writing with my co-writers every morning and evening. So it is a very, very intense process, and it relies on brilliant crew members, brilliant, makeup people, brilliant. We're in the last Borat and in Who Is America. I'm sometimes in the prosthetics chair for 6 hours in the morning and an hour in the evening. So you're relying on many, many brilliant people.
So now, do you find that you sometimes get so into these characters that inhibitions that you, Sasha, might have are gone? I mean, like, is there any scenario under which Sacha Baron Cohen would go out in the world wearing a thong bikini that wrap around his neck, something like that, or would you have to be in a character?
I would have to be in character. And I
Yeah.
think there are times also where you lose yourself in character. So during that scene that you just saw in Bruno, in the cage fight, the one thing I was told not to do was to incite the crowd. Otherwise, I'd be committing a federal crime. And we did that scene 2 nights in a row. The first night, I made a mistake. It shows you how important writing is, that my co-star, my assistant in the movie, gets in the ring and we fight each other. It's a fair fight, but I win and he's bleeding. And what was interesting was the crowd turned on me, and when they were booing me, I sort of lost myself, and then I challenged anyone in the crowd to a fight, which was the one thing I'd been instructed not to do. I assumed that my security would stop people getting in, but then as I saw this huge monster of man get up, I saw that the security team were actually in a completely different part of the stadium where 2 ex-cons had got into a fight themselves. And this guy, jumped and grabbed hold of the cage, did a flip and landed in the ring and roared. And I remember just going into, I built an escape hatch. And my co-writer, Ant Hines, came to me and said, get back in there, finish the movie, kiss Lutz, who was my co-star, kiss him, let's end the movie, finish, we've done all of this. And I said to the security guard, I said, poke your head in. If I can get in there without going to hospital, I'll do it. And he pokes his head in and he just went, go, 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 which was our code word to run. And we ran to a car with an open door with the engine running, got out there and drove through the night to another place in Arkansas. And then we did the scene again.
Oh my God. Wow. Well, I think one final question I'll bring up before we go to the next clips are, as these characters that you've been playing at this point for years, from the TV shows through the breakout movies, people certainly came to know and recognize them in large numbers. And I wonder if that had anything to do with the fact that you were starting to then branch out into movies that were directed by others, written by others, but were not necessarily, it could be of any genre. I mean, we can talk about Sweeney Todd was 2007, Hugo let's just say Tim Burton's Sweeney Todd, 2007, Martin Scorsese's Hugo, 2011, Tom Hooper coming off of The King's Speech, Oscar does Les Mis in 2012. Were you always hoping to have opportunities to act for others and do other things like that? Or was that a byproduct of sort of having your cover blown for a while?
I started off as an actor in Cambridge. I did some dramatic roles, Cyrano de Bergerac, and as I mentioned, Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof, and Tamburlaine the Great in Christopher Marlowe's, and some Shakespeare. And so, no, I've done those movies when I couldn't say no. When Martin Scorsese calls up and says, will you be in my movie? I'm going to say yes. And Les Miserables and The King's Speech, I absolutely adored. And Tim Burton is one of my favorite directors, and same with Aaron Sorkin and Steven Spielberg, the original incarnation of that movie. So I think when I can't say no, I had to go and make those movies. But they've been few and far between. I mean, I've only done 5 or 6 movies that I haven't written. So part of it is a reluctance to go through the immense process. And part of it is just, I want to be in movies that I would love to watch.
Well, and I think we should just also note those have been some of those have been learning experiences for you as much as acting opportunities. I mean, Hugo, there were some terms that you and Scorsese arrived at, right?
Some terms, did you say?
Well, in the sense that you were going to shadow him as a director, weren't you? That was also a
Oh,
part of
yes.
the.
Well, that's right. Well, I asked at the time Marty would direct from a tent because he didn't want anyone to, distract him. And I asked, it was a 6 month shoot, and I knew that I wanted to know more about movie making. And I was going to make a movie called The Dictator. And I asked whether I could sit in the tent. And amazingly, he allowed me to sit silently in the tent and would sometimes even ask my opinion on certain shots, which amazed me. But when there was a comedy, a joke that he was trying to shoot, you know, it's something that I've noticed with the greatest directors in the world. There is no ego. The movie has the ego, and they just want to get the best movie. So
Yeah.
I remember being amazed at one point when Marty turned to me in front of the crew and just said, "How do you think we shoot this joke?" And I was like, well, me? Me? I go, well, I can tell you the cheesy version of shooting it. And he goes, yeah, tell me. And that's the amazing thing about him or Spielberg or even Hooper. They want the best result. They don't care where the idea comes from.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look right now at these are from 2007 Sweeney Todd, from 2011 Hugo, and from 2012 Les Miserables.